right, let's dive into a book that's both a literary masterpiece and a chilling historical document.
Oh, you mean Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn's A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich?
That's the one. We're going deeper than the basic story, though, unpacking layers of meaning that you might have missed on a first read.
Sounds intense.
It is, but we have a great guide for this deep dive. This podcast episode we're referencing is a real gem.
Well, what makes A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich so fascinating is how it shows the reality of the Gulag system.
Yeah, through just a single ordinary day.
Exactly. It's just one day in the life of Ivan Denisovich Shukov, a prisoner.
In a Soviet labor camp.
Right. But the book isn't just telling you what happened, it makes you feel it.
Oh, absolutely. Solzhenitsyn's use of detail, it's incredible.
He doesn't shy away from anything. The hunger, the cold, the constant feeling of being watched.
But even in that bleakness, there are these tiny glimmers of humanity.
Those small victories that Ivan clings to.
Like when he gets an extra ration of bread.
Or figures out how to keep his hands warm for a few minutes.
It makes you think about the psychology behind those small victories, you know.
It's resilience in action, in a place designed to dehumanize you, finding even a little bit of agency.
That's resistance.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder about the long-term psychological effects of living under such oppressive conditions.
Psychologists have been studying that for decades.
Oh, really?
Think about it. In situations where you have very little control over your own life, you can develop something called learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness?
Yeah, it's where you essentially give up trying to improve things.
Because you believe nothing you do matters.
Right. No matter what you do, nothing will change, so why bother?
So how does Ivan avoid falling into that trap?
Those small victories are crucial. They remind him that he still has some control.
Even in tiny ways.
Yes. Some ability to influence his own fate. It's about holding on to hope in the face of despair.
It's not just about individual survival, though, is it?
No, you're right.
There are times when Ivan helps his fellow prisoners.
Showing compassion can still exist even in that brutality.
It speaks to the power of human connection.
Absolutely. Even in the most dehumanizing circumstances.
And those acts of kindness, however small, they have this ripple effect.
Creating tiny pockets of resistance within this larger system of oppression.
You know, it's like the camp is a microcosm of the whole Soviet system.
I see what you mean.
The way Solzhenitsyn portrays the hierarchy, the rules, the surveillance.
It's all a critique of totalitarianism itself, very subtly woven in.
It's masterfully done. He uses the structure of the camp to mirror Soviet society.
Exposing the mechanisms of control, the way they permeate every aspect of life.
Like how time is experienced in the camp.
It's measured in these tiny fleeting moments, not days or years.
It's almost as if you're experiencing time the way Ivan does.
Yeah, and at the end of this grueling day, he calls it almost happy.
That's such a powerful moment.
It really is.
It speaks to the book's enduring message of hope.
The ability to find meaning and even joy in unexpected places.
Makes you question what a good day even means under such circumstances.
Exactly.
It also makes me think about Solzhenitsyn himself.
Of course.
This wasn't just a story for him.
No, he lived it.
He spent 8 years in the Gulag for criticizing Stalin.
Gives the book a raw authenticity. You can feel his experience in every sentence.
And publishing this book, even during the Khrushchev Thaw, it was a huge risk.
Could have landed him right back in the Gulag.
It's a testament to his courage, his belief in the power of truth.
To challenge even the most oppressive systems.
And this was just the beginning for him. A Day in the Life was just a taste.
He went on to write The Gulag Archipelago, a massive expose of the Soviet labor camps.
That book really broke the silence, didn't it?
It did. The Gulag Archipelago was based on hundreds of testimonies from survivors.
Meticulously researched and documented.
A devastating indictment of the Soviet regime.
The impact of that book
Sent shockwaves around the world.
You know, thinking about these two books together, A Day in the Life feels like a microcosm of the Gulag Archipelago.
Interesting take.
One focuses on the intensely personal experience of a single day.
And the other gives you this broad historical panorama.
But both are essential to understanding the human cost of totalitarianism.
I agree. A Day in the Life gives you that visceral emotional connection.
To what it felt like to live under that system.
And the Gulag Archipelago provides the historical context.
The sheer scale of the atrocities.
Both perspectives are vital.
I'm curious about the structure of A Day in the Life.
What about it?
The single-day format seems so simple, yet it works so well.
It was a stroke of genius. Solzhenitsyn focusing on just one day in Ivan's life.
It forces the reader to slow down, experience time the way a prisoner would.
measured in these small, seemingly insignificant moments.
Within those small moments, he conveys so much.
About survival, the struggle for dignity, those quiet acts of resistance.
The things that help people hold on to hope.
Exactly.
The repetitive nature of the day.
Highlights the monotony of camp life.
Yet, Solzhenitsyn reveals these extraordinary moments of human resilience.
Like when Ivan takes pride in laying bricks.
Even those back-breaking labor.
Right.
It's like finding meaning in the most mundane tasks.
It is. It speaks to that human need for purpose, for a sense of accomplishment.
Even in the most dehumanizing environment.
Makes you think about how we find meaning in our own lives, doesn't it?
It does.
Even when we face challenges and setbacks.
It's also interesting how Solzhenitsyn uses the setting of the camp to critique the Soviet system as a whole.
How so?
The camp becomes a metaphor for Soviet society, with its rigid hierarchy.
The arbitrary rules, the constant surveillance.
Everything is designed to break the individual.
To enforce conformity, eliminate any dissent.
It's chilling.
Yeah.
It's a reminder of how easily power can be abused.
How any society can slip into tyranny if we're not careful.
You know, it's fascinating how Solzhenitsyn initially published A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich under a pseudonym.
To protect himself.
He used the name T. Kalinichenko to avoid the authorities.
It wasn't until after the book's success that he revealed his true identity.
Which shows how dangerous it was for him to publish this work.
Absolutely. It was an act of defiance.
A courageous stand against a system that wanted to silence any opposition.
And that act of defiance, it had this ripple effect.
Inspiring others to speak out against injustice.
To fight for a more just and humane world.
I'm struck by how Solzhenitsyn's work, rooted in the Soviet Union,
Right.
it also transcends that context.
His exploration of themes like resilience, the cost of oppression, the importance of individual freedom.
Those themes resonate across cultures and time.
They do.
It's a testament to the power of literature to illuminate the human condition.
To connect us to experiences beyond our own, to inspire us to act for a better future.
Exactly. And that's why A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich offers a message of hope.
Even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can endure.
Small acts of resistance can make a difference.
And the fight for freedom, for dignity, for a world where stories like Ivan's are no longer necessary, it's a fight worth having.
We'll continue our deep dive after a short break.
Looking forward to it. You know, picking up on that idea of resilience.
Yeah.
A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich wasn't just a powerful story.
Right.
It had real-world consequences.
Yeah. I bet it was pretty controversial when it was first published.
Absolutely. Even during the Khrushchev Thaw, there were still limits on what you could say about the Soviet system.
I can imagine.
And this book, with its portrayal of the Gulag, it really pushed those limits.
Do you think it had like an immediate impact?
It caused a huge debate both in the Soviet Union and internationally.
Oh, I bet.
Some people praise Solzhenitsyn for his bravery,
Yeah.
for shining a light on this dark chapter of Soviet history.
It makes sense. But I'm sure not everyone was happy about it.
Right. Others, particularly those who were still loyal to the regime, they saw it as anti-Soviet propaganda.
Oh, wow.
They said he was exaggerating the hardships of camp life and trying to undermine the Soviet state.
That must have been a dangerous time for Solzhenitsyn.
He was under scrutiny, facing constant pressure from the authorities.
But he didn't back down.
He refused to be silenced. And you know what? This was just the beginning of his journey as a dissident.
Oh, right. He didn't stop there.
A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich was just a glimpse.
Right.
He went on to write The Gulag Archipelago.
That massive multi-volume work.
Yes, the one that exposed the full extent of the Soviet labor camp.
Oh, yeah. That book really blew the lid off the whole thing.
It did. The Gulag Archipelago was based on hundreds of testimonies from survivors.
Wow.
Meticulously researched and documented.
Really thorough.
It was a devastating indictment of the regime.
And the impact was huge.
It sent shockwaves around the world.
You know, thinking about these two books together,
Yeah.
it's interesting. A Day in the Life feels almost like a microcosm of the Gulag Archipelago.
That's a good way to put it.
One focuses on a single day, so personal,
Right.
and the other gives you this huge historical panorama.
I like that comparison.
But I think both are essential to understanding the human cost of totalitarianism.
They offer different but equally important perspectives.
Yeah, A Day in the Life gives you that emotional connection.
That gut feeling of what it was like to live under that system.
And the Gulag Archipelago gives you the facts, the scale of it all.
You need both to fully grasp the horror of what happened.
It's incredible how Solzhenitsyn could capture both of those sides.
He was a master storyteller and a meticulous historian.
What do you think about the structure of A Day in the Life? the single-day format. It's so simple but so effective.
I know, right? It was a brilliant choice.
Like focusing on just one day in Ivan's life, it forces the reader to slow down.
You experience time the way a prisoner would in those small moments.
Yeah, and within those small moments, he manages to say so much.
He does. It's amazing how much he packs into those little details.
About survival, the struggle for dignity, those quiet acts of resistance.
He shows how people clung to hope in the most dire circumstances.
The way he portrays the repetitive nature of the day.
It just highlights the monotony of camp life, right?
But then within that monotony, he reveals these moments of incredible resilience.
Exactly. It's those small triumphs that make the story so powerful.
Like, remember that scene where Ivan is laying bricks?
Yeah, it's backbreaking work.
But he takes so much pride in doing it well.
He does. It's not just about the work itself, it's about maintaining his dignity.
Right. It's like a quiet rebellion against the system.
By refusing to be broken, by finding meaning in the most mundane task, he asserts his humanity.
It makes you think,
About what?
about how we can apply that to our own lives.
That's an interesting thought.
Like, what are the things we do, even when they seem small or pointless, that help us feel grounded?
The things that connect us to our values.
Exactly. It's about finding meaning in the everyday.
I think that's a powerful message, especially in today's world.
It is. It's a reminder that we always have a choice in how we respond to challenges.
We can let them break us, or we can find a way to rise above them.
Another thing that struck me about the book is how Solzhenitsyn uses the setting of the camp to critique the Soviet system as a whole.
Oh, absolutely. The camp becomes this metaphor for Soviet society.
With its rigid hierarchy, its arbitrary rules, the constant surveillance.
It's all designed to crush the individual spirit.
To force everyone into conformity, to eliminate any kind of dissent.
That's the goal of totalitarianism, to control every aspect of life.
It's scary to think about how easily that can happen.
It is. It's a reminder that we need to be vigilant about protecting our freedoms.
Because any society can slip into tyranny if people aren't paying attention.
Exactly. We can't take our liberties for granted. We have to constantly defend them.
Remember that detail from the source material about the prisoners being watched all the time?
Oh yeah, even in their most private moments.
That feeling of being constantly observed, it creates this atmosphere of paranoia and fear.
And it reflects how totalitarian regimes operate.
They want to control not just what people do, but what they think and believe.
They want to control everything. It's chilling.
It really is. It makes you appreciate the importance of freedom of thought and expression.
Absolutely. Those freedoms are essential for a healthy society.
It's fascinating how Solzhenitsyn initially published A Day in the Life under a pseudonym.
Right. He used the name T. Kalinichenko
To protect himself from the authorities.
It wasn't until later that he revealed his true identity.
I mean, that just shows how dangerous it was for him to publish this work.
It was an incredibly brave thing to do.
A real act of defiance against a system that tried to silence him.
And his courage inspired countless others to speak out.
It's amazing how one person's voice can make such a difference.
It shows the power of truth, the power of speaking out against injustice.
It makes you realize that we all have a responsibility to do what we can to make the world a better place.
Absolutely. We can't just sit back and let injustice happen. We have to stand up for what's right.
I'm really struck by how Solzhenitsyn's work, while rooted in the Soviet Union, it also goes beyond that specific context.
You're right. It speaks to universal themes.
His exploration of resilience, the cost of oppression, the importance of individual freedom.
Those are things that resonate with people everywhere.
It's a testament to the power of literature to connect us to the human experience.
No matter where or when we live.
It's incredible how stories set in a Soviet labor camp can still feel so relevant today.
It shows that the struggle for freedom and dignity is timeless.
It's a fight that continues in different forms all around the world.
And Solzhenitsyn's work reminds us that we can't afford to be complacent.
We have to keep fighting for a better future.
For a world where stories like Ivan's are no longer necessary.
That's a powerful thought. We'll continue our deep dive after a short break. It's amazing how much we can unpack from A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich.
Right. You think it's a simple story, but
There's so much there.
it's deceptively simple. On the surface, just a day in a labor camp, but
Solzhenitsyn uses it to ask these big questions.
about survival, resilience, what it means to be human.
And he does it so subtly, but it's powerful.
It really stays with you.
I keep thinking about Ivan's relationship with his work.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Even in that horrible place, he takes pride in his bricklaying.
It's true, he does, even when it seems pointless.
You can tell it's not just about the work itself, you know.
What do you think it is?
It's about purpose, holding on to his dignity.
In a system trying to strip him of it.
Exactly. It's like a quiet form of rebellion almost.
Makes sense. By not letting the system break him,
Finding meaning in the mundane.
he's asserting his humanity.
It makes you think, how can we apply that to our own lives?
Oh, I like that.
What things do we do, even if they seem small, that ground us?
Keep us connected to what matters.
Yeah, what gives us that sense of purpose?
It's worth reflecting on, especially now when things feel so chaotic.
It's easy to get lost in the noise.
Finding those little anchors, those rituals.
They can make all the difference.
It's like finding your own small victories, just like Ivan.
Speaking of Ivan, it's hard to imagine surviving what Solzhenitsyn did.
8 years in the Gulag.
How do you come out of that with your spirit intact?
It is remarkable to face that kind of hardship.
And not just survive, but come out with such a sense of purpose.
He felt this responsibility, this mission.
To bear witness, to tell the truth about what happened.
And he did it knowing the risks.
Even after A Day in the Life was published.
He kept speaking out, even though it could cost him everything.
Such bravery, it's inspiring.
It really is, to stand up to that kind of power, even when you're afraid.
It proves that one voice can make a difference.
And that speaking truth to power is so important.
His story makes you realize we all have a responsibility, you know,
To what?
to make the world better, even in small ways.
To fight against injustice wherever we see it.
It's so easy to just sit back and let things happen.
But we can't. We have to stand up for what we believe in.
Absolutely. Solzhenitsyn's work reminds us of that.
Even though it's rooted in that specific time and place, the Soviet Union,
There's something universal about it.
it transcends the context, speaks to all of us.
It's those themes, resilience, the cost of oppression, individual freedom.
Those are things that resonate with everyone, no matter who you are.
It's amazing how a story set in a labor camp
Can still feel so relevant today.
It shows that the fight for freedom and dignity, it never ends.
It just takes different forms.
And we have to keep fighting that fight.
To create a world where stories like Ivan's aren't warnings.
But echoes of a past we've overcome.
That's the goal, right? To learn from those who came before us.
And build a better future.
A future where everyone has the chance to live a life of dignity.
It's been incredible exploring this book with you.
It has. A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich.
It's a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit.
And the importance of speaking truth to power, no matter the cost.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a privilege to share these insights with you.
And may we all find that strength, that courage to live with dignity.
Just like Ivan Denisovich shook off